Hey everyone, this is Element 79. Welcome to my very first episode of how to identify, extract, and eventually recover gold from electronic components. This first episode, I'm going to go into how to kind of separate electronic components from the board. Each one kind of gets refined a little bit differently, so it's really good to separate them, even if you're not going to be refining them yourself. If you're going to send them to a refiner, separating them into separate components will make your dollar go a little bit further. Sending them an entire computer is not going to be as worthwhile as breaking down that computer into valuable components and then selling those components themselves. So there's a few ways we do it here. I've separated into a few different places here. We'll start out with the surface mount capacitors. So they come in different various sizes, shapes. Uh, we've got a few different styles here. So these guys are your surface. The most common one you're going to be finding is probably this guy right here. That's your surface mount capacitor. It'll be labeled as a C on the circuit board. These guys contain silver. These guys, these gold ones here, I've heard can contain gold, but they definitely do contain silver as well. So I kind of put them together with a silver pile. And then we've got different sizes of those, various different shapes and sizes. But these are all surface mount capacitors. They definitely contain silver. Some of them may contain a little bit of gold. So I separate them all into their own little pile here. So we'll get those back into the pile and move on to the next one. The next one that I've separated is gold-plated pins, gold-plated connectors, that sort of thing. So anything that contains gold plate is obviously mostly nickel, aluminum, tin, other sorts of metals, but there are precious metals in there as well. Um, it's a few different types here. So we've got our these are cellular communicator connectors. Uh, they're not they're not solid gold, obviously. They are gold plated though. So we're going to set them with the gold plated materials. There. And we've got some other various things like the ring connectors, some pins, those sorts of things. Anything that contains just the traces amounts of gold. Um, I separate into those. So things like Ethernet connectors that have 8 pins on them. They're all gold plated on the tips. Usually not the entire wire itself, but on the tips themselves, they're gold plated. So we'll break them off, separate them, and eventually be able to extract that. The next category we go with are silver containing crystals, capacitors, so sort of thing. So we've got a few different types. So we've got this is a surface mount capacitor. These guys contain silver. They don't contain any gold, but they do contain trace amounts of solder. They're silver, sorry. One thing you do want to make sure you do though is to cut off the pins, because those are just tin. You don't want them to be in with your valuable precious metals, because it's just gonna suck up your nitric acid down the road when you decide to refine those. But these are worthwhile keeping. They come in different sizes. The next thing is your silver crystals. These are oscillating crystals. They come in different shapes and sizes as well. Sometimes they're a little bit thicker. Now these guys as well, if you take a look, they've got a bit of a plastic back plate on them with a couple pins. So if you just bend those pins back, peel off that, you can peel off that plastic. You still have those couple pins there. You can just bend them back and forth a few times, break those off. Those aren't going to be containing anything other than tin. And there's your silver oscillating crystal. Same thing with these guys. On the back plate, I've already taken it off. It had 4 pins on it. Cleared them off already. This one here, again, just got to bend out those pins, take the plastic off, break those pins off, then save these. All right, so these are all silver containing components. So I keep them in a separate container. These guys here, I'm not 100% sure about them. I believe they are an oscillating crystal as well, just very tiny. So we'll keep them in there. And then anything that I'm not going to end up using, just like the plastic and the pins, are just going to go into my little junk bin. Next one is ceramic capacitors. Again, they come in various different shapes and sizes. The round ones are the ones you want to look for. The rectangular ones usually only contain aluminum foil inside, so those aren't going to be anything worthwhile. But any of these guys, round, they come in blue, brown, orange, all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Those are worthwhile keeping for silver. They don't contain any gold, but silver's worth money too. Again, you want to break those pins off. Break those guys off and just keep the ceramic capacitor itself. So we'll keep those guys. And then the last collection pile that I separate is IC/BGA chips. So these guys contain gold foils inside of the chips themselves. So these guys come in all sorts of different types. This one itself here, it's most of the board itself is really not usable, but can keep the content, keep the entire chip itself, and we'll incinerate it, grind it up, and extract the little tiny gold fibers from it down the road. So there's these guys. They come in smaller flat packs. These ones here, they come off of RAM chips. You want to keep those and just start collecting a pile of these. Ones with the 4 different legs on them. You know, again, you want to be able to keep them. Man, my phone won't focus at all. But you get the idea. All right, so now that we know what to look for on circuit boards, let's go ahead and break a circuit board apart and start taking out the components. Some of the tools you'll need: flathead screwdriver, pair of needle nose pliers, Phillips screwdriver, a pair of larger pliers, flush cutters, some tin snips, wire strippers, and a heat gun to be able to take off the IC chips. So let's take a look at this board here. Now, this board has a few components. Here we've got one of those ceramic capacitors. So we'll take that guy off. I took a look at the pins on this. They're all, there's no gold plate on them. There we go. There's no gold plate on those, so we won't worry about those. This big capacitor here doesn't have anything valuable. There's another surface mount capacitor right here. 2 more right here. So we'll grab those. We've got a Ethernet port with 8 pins that have gold plating on them. And we have a cellular antenna connector with a pin in there as well. So we'll take those components off. On the back here, we don't know what's behind the heat shields yet. We'll take a look. Now we've got a large surface mount capacitor right here, another IC chip. We do have some tiny surface mount capacitors down here, but they're so tiny that it's almost not even worth going after. So we'll start it out. Basically, with these capacitors, you can just grab a pair of pliers, give it a twist, and it pops right off. On this side here, we'll grab our cutters, cut off the ceramic capacitor here. Okay, we've got a couple more of these surface mount capacitors. Again, just use your pliers, pry it off. There we go. Now we've got our Ethernet port and our cellular port that we'll take off. Just get a pair of pliers, give this guy a good reef. It pops off. This guy, get a little twist. It comes off, and if you get it right, you can get the pin right out of the connector. There we go. So the pin's right there. Nice shiny gold pin. We'll pry that out, just like that. All right, so we got the gold pin. That's not needed anymore. Now with these network ports, you can pry the aluminum foil off and be able to dissect this thing and get those pins out. But really, it's just the tips of the pins that have any sort of gold plating on them. So what I usually do is just grab a pair of pliers or screwdriver, pry those pins out to the point where you can cut off the tips. There we go. So you can see the gold plating on them, and then it turns into non-gold plating near the base. So just get some cutters, cut those guys out. There we go. That can be discarded. We'll move on to what's behind the heat shields. So just a little flathead screwdriver. It'll pop the covers right off. Alright, so this guy here needs to be pried out a little bit more. Careful when you're doing this, because as you can see by my hands, you start looking like hamburger meat. But wearing gloves is it's hard to be able to do this properly with gloves. So you just have to be careful. Pry that guy right off. Inside of here, we've got, looks like 2 IC chips, nothing on the back. So we use a heat gun to take those off. On this one here, we've got a little bit of a reinforcement. Just use the screwdriver to pry that off. It looks like we got a couple more ICs there, so which we'll use the heat gun as well. Now this guy here, I forgot to mention, this one here is a fuse, I believe. It's labeled F on the circuit board, but it is shiny and gold, and people have told me that there is gold in it, so we're going to take that off with the heat gun as well. All these pins are non-gold plated, so we're not going to worry about those. And that's pretty much it for this board. All right, so let's get into taking off these IC chips with the heat gun. So we'll start with the heat gun here. Plug this baby in. Now you're not going to want to work directly on any sort of a meltable or flammable surface because heat transfer is quite efficient with circuit boards, believe it or not. So I've just got like an old power supply housing that I just kind of keep things up and off of the, don't want to spill my beer, keep things up and off of the ground so nothing melts. All right, so let's get started here. Let's start with those three right here. So we got this guy, this guy, and this guy. We'll start with those three, and then we'll flip her over to the front and go from there. All right. So let's see if I can set this up in a way you can see nicely. Okay. Now, when you're applying heat, you don't want to apply heat too fast, too quick, otherwise you'll just start burning things. And oh, one other thing. Speaking of burning things, on this side here, this capacitor, when they get hot, they like to pop, and they like to make a loud noise when they pop. So I like to cut those off and get them out of the way when I'm using heat. A lot of these types of capacitors, small, medium, large, will do that same thing. They'll pop when they get too hot, and it'll catch you by surprise, that's for sure. So let's just cut that guy out of there. There we go. Also, with some of the smaller ceramic capacitors, they like to pop as well, but not nearly to the same degree as these bigger ones. So let's get her going. So you got to give it, when you're first setting up your heat gun, it's obviously going to take a lot longer than normal to heat up. But once you got it good and warm, it doesn't take very long for these surface mount devices to be removed easily. So just give it a good amount of heat. Use a pair of tweezers and give it a wiggle. Oh, I blew the circuit. Look at that. Shit. Okay, I'm gonna have to switch to a different plug. I forgot. I've got a smart power bar here that works awesome to be able to control everything remotely. It even includes a webcam to be able to watch what you're doing remotely, monitor things. But it's got a real low amperage for the circuits. All right, let's try that again. So just give it good direct heat. It is a good idea to do this in a ventilated area because this will give off solder fumes and other nasty fumes that you may not want to be sucking in. One of these days, I'm going to invest in a vice grip or something to make my life a little bit easier. I tried picking up one of those helping hands, but they're just not strong enough to be able to hold this thing steady. So there we go. And it lifts right off. See that? Okay, so that's one. Now everything around it is already going to be hot. So this one shouldn't take nearly as, there you go. Not nearly as long because it's already, the board's hot. The gun is hot. There we go. That's three. Let's flip this guy over. Let's get that gold fuse that was over here. There we go. This IC chip here. Now these guys here, these are just diodes. They don't have anything containing anything worthwhile. There we go. Anything else? Oh, there's one more little IC chip, tiny one over here. Oh, two of them actually. There. And there. All right, so that's pretty much everything for this board. There is a little micro SD adapter here. It's so tiny, and I've tried prying them off and getting the pins out of it, but the pins are so small, so minuscule, that it's not even really worth your effort. But it's up to you if you want to try it. So that's that board. Let's get to this one. There's 1, 2, 3 chips on here that I want to get. Get this board good and hot. One. Two. Let's look at here. Three. Okay. So that's everything out of that little playing card deck size circuit board. So let's kind of see what kind of yield we ended up with. Everything all combined. Okay. So we've got one round ceramic capacitor. We've got one, two, three, four large surface mount ceramic capacitors. I did end up taking off the smaller ones here. So there's one, two, three, there's six of those here. We got 8 pins from the Ethernet port, one cellular antenna pin, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 different IC chips, and one golden fuse. So I mean, for a small circuit board like that, it's that's not too bad. About 1,000 more of those, and we might make a couple bucks. Okay, now I want to show you a few different other types of boards. Some boards are worthwhile, and some boards aren't. They get graded a little bit differently as to what components are on them. So we'll start with maybe a couple RAM chips here. I've already cut off the foil connectors, the gold foil connectors, but it's got a whole bunch of IC flat packs on them. This one doesn't on the back, but if you want to get those off, those are worthwhile. For example, this is what the foil fingers look like on this one here. And all you really need to do, get a pair of snips and just start trimming it off. You want to get a little amount of circuit board as possible so that your acid solution isn't eating away at stuff. It's just waste. There you go. And now you've got gold foil that you can throw in hydrochloric acid and peroxide solution. Those foils will just slough right off, and then you can discard what's left. So I'll put those with the gold pins. And there's another board here. I've already started dissecting this board. It had a couple flat pack IC chips on here. There were a bunch of surface mount, oh, there's one there, surface mount capacitors. Got them off. We'll probably take these 3 chips off. And then it's got a whole bunch of, it looks like it was a 16 port switch at one point. I've got 8 of the ports off already. I'll take the other 4 off, cut off the pins, and that's that board. This board here, so it's got a little connector here. It's got a few some gold pins in there. It's got another connector right here. It's got a IC chip, 2 IC chips, and it's got a few LEDs on the bottom. I've heard that LEDs have silver. I don't know for sure. I'm going to take them off and just separate them for now. And then, of course, there is another gold plated, I think that's a capacitor, but it's definitely gold plated. We'll take that off as well. On the back, there isn't really anything special. So that's that one. It looks like this might be a button or a sensor. Maybe we'll take that off as well. But let's go into like a low grade board. So this would be something that we consider a low grade board. It doesn't have a whole lot on it worthwhile. In fact, I don't know if it has anything worthwhile. These capacitors here don't contain anything. It's got a few transistors. Transistors don't contain anything. MOSFETs, from what I've heard, they don't contain much. All of these pins, none of these pins have gold plating on them. Behind the heat, you always want to check behind the heat sinks. There's usually something special. Now with this board, it's actually hollow behind, and it looks like it's just another MOSFET. So we won't worry about those. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything too special. Diodes, transistors, MOSFETs, they don't really contain anything special. So I think this board is pretty much done. I just saved it just to show you guys, what a low grade board would be. Yeah, we'll scrap this one. I mean, if you're going for copper, there's a lot of copper on it, but I'm not going for copper. Here it looks like we have another network switch, another Ethernet port. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more over here. USB ports, how they have gold-plated pins. This connector here is actually what this plugged into before I cut it off. It plugged right in there. These are all gold-plated pins, as you can see. So we'll take that off. We've got a couple IC chips, BGA chip here, gold corner BGA chip. They call them gold corner because it has literally a gold corner on it. That gold doesn't really go anywhere. That's just to kind of show where the placement of this chip should be on the board. But it is still gold plated, and there are gold bonding wires inside of these. So we'll take those off. We've got a couple surface mount capacitors. So that's not too bad of a board. These push buttons here, they've got I think it's a silver contactor in there. Well, I always take those off and keep them separate in a little bin, and another LED. Backside doesn't look like there's a whole lot special here. A couple surface mount capacitors. That's about it. So there's a website called boardsort.com. They can give you an idea of what your board is worth. It's a great reference to see if you have anything worthwhile. These guys here, I don't know what these are. Maybe you guys can tell me. I'm going to save them. I have two of them on this board. I don't know exactly what they are or what they contain, but I'll take them off anyway. And yeah, that's kind of what you're looking for in different boards. Round chips, computer motherboards, they're the best, your best bet. Hard drives, there's a little bit of gold, some silver in those as well. I have a couple hard drives kicking around here. I might make another video about that. But I think that's about it for this video. If you have any comments, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great day and get that gold.